So today Spirit wanted to illustrate a little bit about the concept or the energy of moments of beauty, and want to really sort of focus in on that. Sometimes we have a hard time in distinguishing whether somebody is really genuine and they really like us or love us, or whether we're really serious about all kinds of things like working out or committing to something, committing to a project, and then soon after we commit, we start to lose momentum. I'm not sure if you've ever noticed that. I think going to the gym is probably one of the most common, where you sign up for a gym membership, actually pay the entire year, and you'll go for the first 3 weeks of January. And this is where the January or the New Year's resolutions come in, because our intentions outside are good. But those are all what they call moments of beauty. When we say, I'm going to start losing some weight, or I'm going to start being more fit, or I'm going to start, and whatever the goal is. It always looks good because we're just making our decision based on the moments of beauty. And we just want you to sort of be aware of this, so that as you're committing, then today we're going to give you some different little techniques and tools to ask yourself, or whether or not I'm really committed to do this, because it'll save you a lot of heartache. First of all, when you commit to something and you don't follow through, right soon after, there's a little bit of guilt that comes in, right? Like, I mean, you can only imagine you'll pay $700 for a gym membership and then go 3 times and then never go again. What the gym industry, if that's a good name for it, the gym industry rely on is those 3 weeks, because that makes up approximately 30 to 40% of their revenue. People that are wanting to get into a healthier body and then find out that there's all this work, and then they don't go anymore. And of course, it's not refunded, and so you're sort of stuck that way, or you got to go through that membership, and that's where they make most of their revenue. So what we want to get you to do is, before you commit and get into that situation where guilt can come in. Like if you don't end up going, I can only imagine the guilt somebody would feel. Oh, that was kind of I'm apprehensive, in the sense that I could have thought about this further and didn't have to put more money into something. But more important than the money is that now you feel sort of not the best, in the sense that you committed to something and you couldn't follow through. Now, not following through something is okay. We're not always ready to work out or do some other things, because we're working on maybe another mental project that's taking up a lot of our time, and we're just not ready. It is okay not to be ready. Okay? It is okay. But when we make a commitment, that's when your mind says, I'm going to do this. And then it doesn't happen. So we're going to give you some tools today to sort of identify that and ask yourself some questions, that kind of thing. So the first thing is, when we looking at anything that looks good in the beginning, okay, so that's look in the mirror and you say, you want a healthier body, or you want to be more fit, or you want to have a certain weight level, or when, let's say, you're a music buff and you want to create more music, or if you were actually a writer and you're doing things, and it all looks good when you first commit to it, but then when it doesn't happen, you have that, it's almost like a letdown. When we are committing, this is what usually happens. When we look at something from our physical conscious level and we see these moments of beauty, these are the ultimate in what things are going to end up being. And we say, yes, I want to be there. But then you ask yourself the question, what does it take to be there? What kind of, not only the commitment, but the work? It's the work that usually people will sort of have this one thing. For instance, when you're going to a gym membership, going back to that example, when we are committing, this is what we're going to do. And if it doesn't sort of work out, we could back out. And there's very little consequences other than the fact that, okay, you didn't eat very well, or you backed out of the of this particular commitment, and there's really, it's minimal in terms of the impact. It's far different when you decide to have children, isn't it? You can't back out on that one. You have a child, that's it. You're committed, you know. And that's probably the most, when you see a well-mannered 5-year-old in a restaurant. Oh, I love my kids for if they could do that sort of thing. And so right away you have that moment of beauty. But what does it take from birth to 5 years old for the child to act that way? Now, those of you that have children, I see people laughing already. Those of you that have children know that it isn't easy. In other words, when you're looking at a child that way, all right, you're already looking at what that child will give to you. Because when you look at it, you smile. You say, yeah, that's the kind of child I would like to have, right? When you look at a body that is well fit, you're saying, that's what I want to be. I want to be able to run up the stairs and not even take a second breath. I can actually hold my breath all the way up the stairs, and it's no big deal. Because we're looking at it of what the fitness can give to us. All right? You see the pattern? When we go to music, when you finally create that music or a podcast, or you create something and it's finished, you see in your mind the end result, and the people say, oh man, that was fantastic. I love the song. I love the podcast. I love the way you did that presentation, or whatever it is. You see the end result. And so how do you feel about that? So when that happens, the energy says, I feel good about myself. So in other words, it's what that will be in the end will be able to give to us. Okay, in the end. Now, if I were to say to you that as soon as a child is born, I want you to charge it rent, it would make no sense to you. I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. The child is, like, we have to put a lot of time and effort and spend money on all, the swings and all the diapers and so on. And there's just a never ending sort of need for that child. You would think, of course, that would be normal. But you'd be surprised when we look at, I want to lose some weight, that people will go to the gym and literally, when they come home after their first time in the gym, they're looking at their muscles. They're seeing this, are there going to be any difference? They don't see a lot of difference, or any difference. Day in, day out. If they do that 3 times a week, and they go for several weeks, you still won't see the difference. And what minor changes you might see in your weight, even if you start losing fat, because you're working out, you will gain muscle. Muscle is heavier than fat. So there won't even be a lot of weight changes. So let's say you're working out for 3 months, and you're working out for 3 months, and things just keep going, and then you still don't think you've made any progress until you meet somebody that hasn't seen you for 3 months. Then they'll say, oh, Jackie or Tony, or you look fantastic. Says, I do, because I haven't seen you for 3 months, and you like it. I see it in your face. It's a lot thinner. You've lost a bit of bulk. You look stronger. Really? Because you see yourself every day. It is just so minute, the changes, you miss it. You won't see a lot of changes again on the scale, not right away. Because again, when you build up that muscle, the muscle will eventually be a fat burning tool, but that muscle has to come at a price. When we look at only the moments of beauty and make our decision solely on that, it usually results in failure. And we just want to illustrate what this concept is. When we look at children and all the work you have to do to raise that child, there are some days you could say, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. There's like they won't sleep at night. And I can only give you a whole list of things about kids and what could come up. And this is when the kids are healthy, when it's normal. We're not even talking about if it's colicky or if it's autism. That's a totally separate thing. I'm just talking about normal, like everything's coming in healthy, all right, ideal conditions. And there's still so many issues that could come up. You're always worried about the child. Then there's always something coming up. And so in that work, we get committed that, okay, we don't have a choice, we will keep going. But are you as committed when you make a choice about, let's say, becoming more healthy? So before you make that commitment, look at this moment of beauty and say, okay, what will it take to attain that? It's a totally separate thing. Tony Robbins used to say in some of his talks where he could say, I could tell what your rituals are just by looking at you when he's talking about weight and body composition. And what he's basically suggesting there is a ritual is not just a one-time thing. Today, my ritual is I'm going to eat right and do all these things. Well, that's not a ritual. A ritual is something you do every day, and the discipline is there. It's in the Word. It's a ritual. It's something that doesn't change. So many times when we decide that, okay, we're going to start jogging, let's say, through the park, and then one day we'll go out and it is pouring rain. Like it's coming down in buckets. Then you say, well, I can't go out today. It gets raining. It's really bad. So now you've given and you don't go. So now you've given yourself one out on not being able to follow your ritual. Then it comes a time where it's 40 degrees in the morning, like 8 o'clock in the morning, it's like 40 degrees. It's so hot that you're worried now about dehydration, and it's going to be it's going to be sweltering. I'll get back and I might get sick. I might get heat stroke, whatever. So now you have two if you don't go. You have two excuses. Then, of course, if it's 40 below and you don't go, because it could be icy on the sidewalk, you could trip and fall or hurt yourself, you might not be able to work out for weeks on end because of the injury. Now you have three. So do you see how the compromise starts to work on the ritual? A ritual happens no matter what. If it's 40 below, 40 above, raining, it does not matter. You're going to go anyway. You'll just dress for it. It's a ritual. It's actually more than a discipline. A discipline is something that this is what I'm going to be doing all the time, okay? But a ritual is just it's like a family heritage. It's our ritual. This is what we do. And so it compromises it gets away from the compromises from that. Now, once you're aware of that you'll be jogging in the rain, you'll be jogging when it's 40 below, then you sort of reach in, so is it still worth it? You ask yourself, is it still worth it working out? And you said, well, if you say well without even an answer, it's a no. Okay? There is no yes or no. There's a yes, absolute yes, and even sort of, if you say sort of, yeah, I'm sort of ready, or I guess I can do that, that's a no. That's an absolute no. What if somebody were to propose to you and you were to ask them, do you love me? Well, like it has to be a yes. Like otherwise, you're not going to waste your whole life on, I think I can do this. I'll be there, on the most part. Yeah, I'm going to save you $250,000 right now. Run from that kind of a proposal because it's nothing but heartache. Heartache. There's always going to be abandonment issues. Will this person leave on a drop of a hat? You don't need that for the next 20, 30, 40 years. So when the moments of beauty happen, this is where you can ask yourself questions first to see if the moments of beauty are actually worth it. And you're saying, yeah, the moments of beauty, I get it. I want to be in this body, or I want a great relationship, or whatever it is. And it gives you that level of commitment based on a ritual of how you're going to live your life for the next. And it's not, and people say it's not a short term whenever you're making a lifestyle change. It's a lifestyle change. This is how you're going to be running your life from the now on. I saw this one interview with this lady, and one of the questions asked was, what do you see in a husband? Like if you were to have a list of things, do you have a list of traits that you would like in a husband? She was single, looking for someone in her life. She says, "Oh yeah, I got this down. He has to have a sense of humor. He's got to be good looking, but not cocky. He's got to be well mannered. He's got to like kids. He's got to like dogs and cats, and he's got to be able. And I had this whole list, and she raffled off and peppered off this list of 12 or 14 things that she wants in a husband. I think it was less than a minute. She had everything that she wanted. The next question was, what are you willing to put into that relationship? She says, what do you mean? Well, this is all the things that you're going to get in this relationship. And it looks impressive. You get a husband like that. Oh, you also include housework. You get that work in there. And then what are you going to put in? Well, she says, it isn't about me. This is what I want. So what are you going to put in? What are you going to give for this relationship? In other words, what the counselor wanted to kind of bring up is that a relationship, any relationship, whether it's a relationship between two people in a life group together, or whether it's a client and you, or whether it's always about how much you're going to give. And the other person will have the same commitment. They're going to give so much, I'm going to give so much. The receiving is just what we're going to get. But how much are you going to give? It's measured by how much you're going to give. Whenever we do that, you will find 40, 50, 60-year-old anniversaries that happen because both parties want to give something to the relationship, and there's always a level of compromise, and it's always so easygoing, and it's a beautiful dance that will last. But when we always are measured of how much we're getting, it doesn't work. Now, those of you, even if we take this model and put it in, let's say, the employer, where you work, how much are you going to give that employer so you're worth the money you're going into? And the person says, what do you mean? He says, well, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to show up for work. Okay, well, that was sort of a given. We thought if we hired you, you would show up. It's not a positive that you're showing up, but I'll show up and I'll just be there in body sort of thing. And then these are the same people that complain they're not getting raises because they only want to do the minimum. Recently, I read an article on quiet quitting. I'm not sure if you heard this term, but it's the first time I've heard it. But when we talk about quiet quitting, it's all about they've quit this whole situation long before it gets anywhere. So they just do the absolute minimum they can in their jobs, and then if they get a raise, great. It's all good. Why should I bust myself and then somebody else will get the raise as well? If all the raises are based on time, like seniority, not based on merit, then it doesn't matter. As long as I'm here and I show up and I give the illusion that I do a lot of work, then that's all there is to it. But then when we come to raises, the whole thing is how you should be worth more always than you're being paid. In other words, if you're looking for a raise, the only reason they would give you that raise is because you're coming in early, you're leaving late, you're putting in more effort, you're helping others when you're not being paid for it, you're coming in and you're part of the team. In other words, you're putting in more than you're being paid for. So when you get a raise, it's already services rendered. In other words, you've already put in that time, and the raise is just catching you up, rather than a raise that you don't do much or anything, and you feel that you deserve that because you just simply show up. So in a relationship, when two people get together in a relationship, it's always about how much you should be giving, and that it's always worth more what you give than what you get. That will always be more sustainable than the other way around. All right? Now, one of the things I wanted to highlight in this is that I was reading an article on Marilyn Monroe. And years ago, and this was in the 50s, 60s, when Marilyn was at the height of her career. And at that time, she was considered the sexiest, most desirable, attractive woman on the planet. Everywhere that she went was news. She would go anywhere, and if people just wanted to be around her. By the time she was 30 years old, in various things that she did, she had already gone through three husbands and now working on a fourth. And I was just mesmerized by one of her comments. And she says, "Why is it that all the people that love me leave?" So here you are. Let's say you're married this person, and you would think that any guy on this planet would love to be known as your wife is Marilyn Monroe. And this is where the moments of beauty come in. Because when they look at her, they look at all the things that they can get out of the relationship and not what they could put in. Now, when Marilyn did her movies, it took 2, 3, 5, 8 times longer than any movie that they've ever worked with. Marilyn Monroe was going through a lot of self image issues. She was treated very badly in her childhood and was abandoned by her dad. She went through many homes and many places, and she was really in bad shape. But someone discovered her, and it just sort of took off. When she did a movie in a part, maybe it was 20 seconds long, her part, her lines and everything, she would have to do 60, 70, and 80 takes before she got it right. Because it just wasn't right, and she laughed at the wrong time and sneezed, it just didn't work. And then she sometimes didn't come in for work, where imagine a whole production crew showing up for Marilyn's performance so that they could go on to the next scene, and she comes in, 2, 3 hours late, and everyone's waiting. And in those days, it still was incredibly expensive per hour. The production team is just waiting for this person to come. Finally comes, and the director says, "Where have you been? You're yelling at me. I'm going home." In other words, there was so much work to manage Marilyn Monroe at the time. And then when she finally come on stage, she was they told her, just do the scene, do whatever you want to do, that's fine. And then she did the scene, and out of the 70 takes, she did one of them perfectly. And when it went on screen, you couldn't keep her eyes off her. So that's the moment of beauty, in the sense that, in other words, we don't look at the 70 times it didn't work, but the one time that it did. And the entire movie has hundreds or thousands of those little scenes, those little perfect scenes, and they all took so long to do. But they had these little lucky shots, as you guess you can call it, and they were putting it all together to make an incredible movie. When she starred with Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon in the 50s, and she made It's Like Some Like It Hot, it's still considered the sexiest comedy of all time. And many people have watched that movie again and again, and they just can't keep their eyes off of her, because they've taken a small portion of her life and put it on screen. And so what does that mean in real life? If somebody decides that they want to be part of your, want to be a coach with you, or they want to buy your music, or they want to marry you, or whatever it is, and they're basing their decision on those moments of beauty, do you see how unsustainable that could be? Because when they find out what your real life is like, it's nothing like what it is on your moments of beauty. When you are in your dream position and you have these amazing epiphanies, and people see it. This is great. This is a great person. And then they find out who you really are. And it's not that it's that much. That's your life. And so when you're only taking the best of what you have and you show that, it's a little deceptive. I mean, at the very beginning, I've had clients over the years that when they come in, they'll say, "Well, I have this amazing person that we want to get married, but there's one thing that's sort of a thing with me, but I'm willing to overlook it." And I says, "Oh, what is that?" He says, "Well, I've always been raised as a very clean person. My mom used to watch the lint as you know, through the window, and she would grab the lint before it hits the floor. She had an impeccable house, right? Everything was so clean. And this person isn't like that. It's you know, they'll keep the dishes on overnight, and maybe over the next 2 or 3 nights before this person will wash it, and you know, the place isn't so clean. But I could probably overlook that because he's a great guy. And then years later, when they get together again, that became an issue because you're basing your whole decision on that one thing, that this is a great person, but not taking into account all the other things. And what may seem like a small, little, infinitesimally little detail will turn into something big because it's part of you. If you grew up in a speckless environment, you can't live like a pig. That was her words. And that was her words at the end. She didn't say that in the beginning. He says, I just couldn't take it anymore. You know, I had these mounds of dishes, and I would do them. He says, no, we'll do it in the morning, or he would just make all this fuss and not clean up after himself. And she did it for 10 years, and I've had enough. I can't do it anymore. So when we are basing our decision based on that, just want you to ask yourself one thing. When a person or a client or whoever that you're getting involved in, are they choosing me because they have a moment of beauty and that they see in me? Okay, that's the first question. The second one is, if I'm wanting to get into that, am I making my decision based on a moment of beauty? Or am I looking at the whole package? I want to know something more about a person than just what I see in the movies or just what I see. I want to know who they are. I want to know more about them, in other words. And this also involves with projects. If you see a project in the very beginning, like it's a great project, it's going to be making, let's say, a housing project, and some of the funds will go into a charity, and it all looks good, you know, as far as the thing on paper. But then when you look further into it and get away from the limelight and all of the things, what do you see? And is there anything that is striking your core beliefs? If they're saying, yeah, well, if we make any money, then we'll just put that into the charity, but that will be under advisement, so we may end up keeping it. And if that bothers you, then you have to ask more questions. In other words, just the tiniest detail in something, you're looking at it. You're not going into something or anything just because it looks good in the beginning. Now this is an energy, okay? When we just look at this energy of moments of beauty, most times it is not really the truth. It's not really what's going on. And it's not until we start to look further down. But the Marilyn Monroe is a great example in the sense that here we have this individual that the whole world loved her, but nobody loved her. All she wanted was a person that she could just confide in. The husband would come home, she'd be on the floor and have alcohol and drugs, and she'd be looking for some consoling, something. And nobody decided or figured it would be worth to see what's going on. He says, "Oh, you can do this," you know, because like this is not going with the trait that I married you with, because you're supposed to be bubbly and you're supposed to be all these things, but in your private moments you will have some time that you're down. And if the other person doesn't have any support, this is where she would equate the fact that I've been abandoned and abused my whole life. Even when people said they loved me, it wasn't unconditionally. In other words, they went into the relationship with what they could get from the relationship, not what they could give. When it takes you so much longer to find out how much you could give instead of get in this, then you will realize that it is always how much you can put of yourself into something. And this is a great example for that. So when we are looking, if some of you are looking at getting into a relationships or know with someone who are, make this sort of apparent in their quest of really what's going on, whether someone is loving you for what they could get or what they could actually give you, because it is a two-way street. What would I want you to do? We're gonna play the same video that we did last week. It's about 14 minutes, and this time, in all the pictures that you see, I want you to it'll show different elements of a person's life. If you were here last week, and this way, I want you to ask yourself: is it worth what you're seeing? So if you're seeing yourself running through the finish line, let's say, and all of the workout that it takes to do that. Is it now? It's great to see that as a mark of beauty and the moments of beauty, but is it worth it for you to be put in all that work for those few seconds that you'll pass the finish line? And then there's other things about winning, about things, and then I want you to ask yourself, is that worth all of the work? And then this way you're going to be more conditioned to not just look at, that's the body that I want. He says, am I willing to have the ritual to eventually get to that body look? One thing I found recently is, I had a client recently that said that when I was 14, I thought I looked fat. But when I looked back 20 years and saw me at 14, I looked really good. I said, well, how did you feel at 14? Oh, I thought I was fat and ugly and all of that. I says, do you have a picture 10 years after that? And she says, a matter of fact, I do. I have one when I was 25, and I looked awesome then. And I said, and how did you feel? Do you remember how you felt when you were 25? Yeah, I still felt that I was sort of overweight, and I felt I didn't have a good thought. But when I look at my body, I looked amazing. And I said, well, how do you feel about your body today? He says, I don't feel that good about my body. So do you see that your body has changed, but your view of your body has not? It's the same. So it's consistent. So let me ask you this. If in 10 years you look back at the body you have now, based on what you've already seen over the last 10 and 20 years, would you want to sort of find out what you would probably say? I'd probably say, I look good right now. I says, you will, because your body will be different in 10 years. In other words, it's not how you feel about your body. It's the fact that your body is only what people will see. How do you feel about yourself? It's that self-image that will always be consistent. Because when we look at some people in their past, they said, "Oh, I always had a great response about the way I looked and the way, and even now I look fantastic." And she says, "I have a special mirror in my room, and it's called the Drop Dead Gorgeous mirror. And every time I look at it, I look drop dead gorgeous." She said, "I've had this mirror for 20 years, and it just makes me feel good watching myself in it." So you see, her body has changed immensely over the last 20 years, as all of our bodies do, right? It will shift. But the view of herself has not. So we need to change our moments of beauty, not to what we see, but what's inside. What kind of a ritual do you have inside when somebody says, "Oh, you look good today"? And if somebody responds by saying, "Not really, I just wear this dress when I don't care how I look." Oh dear, why would you, why would you say that? And I'm thinking to myself, when a person says, "You look good in that dress," thank you, it's one of my favorite. It's just a response to how they feel inside. And it could just be an everyday dress, or it could be a cocktail. It doesn't matter what it is. How do you feel? There are some people that have track pants, and they look amazing. They look amazing. So it's not what you wear, it's the beauty you have inside, and that's what we want to sort of cultivate today, is what do you see inside that you're not letting other people label you, you're not letting other people say, "This is what you're worth, this is how I see you." No, I don't see myself that way. Besides, how much are you going to give me, because I'm used to receiving? I'm a good giver, but I'm also need to receive. What are you going to give? And if they don't, if the answers aren't right, they'll say, well, maybe you need some time to work on it. You know, the person that just wants to receive doesn't know how to give that much either. So in the video that you're going to see, I want you to look at the various things and ask yourself, is it worth it? And do I feel like a winner? And if you don't, it's okay. In your private time, hey, it is okay that I don't always feel like a winner. That's all right. But realize that can change. It's just a thought away. So we want to be able to increase your level of self-worth just by looking at the fact that it is inside of you. It's not a look. Because when you look back, you'll always look, hey, I actually did look good then. So what was I thinking? What was I doing? And even when people are surrounding you and they're saying, oh, you look good here, you look good there, you'll reject it if you don't agree with the self-image that people are saying good things about you and you don't agree with it. Your music is really good. It's okay. No, it's really good, but it's okay. In other words, what are they seeing that you might not be? Because we tend to be overcritical with our own things that we want to do, right? So let's look through the video and talk about and ask yourself, is it worth it for me to be in there, and what ritual do I need to do to get there? Okay, so I want you to just get yourself in a nice comfortable position. Okay, take a nice deep breath. Breathe in the color orange. The orange today is going to be a self-worth, self-fulfilling, and whatever you are today is that you're enough. You don't need to add anything. We don't need to take anything away. You're absolutely perfect. Because if we go 10 years ahead and we look back on you today, you'll agree with me. So just base it on that. And let's see where we are in about 14 minutes. Okay, and let's enjoy. slowly come out of that situation and just jot some notes down on how you feel of some of these, whether or not it's worth it. Was learning to ride a bike, was that worth it, even though you fell down so many times? But as a kid, you just want to have fun. You don't look at it as work. You looked at it as, okay, you fell down, get up, do it again, do it again. Oh, Dad, I can't do this. Or Mom, I can't do this. You can do this. Or somebody might have encouraged you, even if it's a friend. But somewhere along the way, you learn how to ride a bike. The one that caught me, I don't know if anybody else got this one, was the graduation. When we first decide to go to college or university, and after those 3, 4, 5 years, however long you were in that university or college environment, and you got that piece of paper, you accepted it. It took maybe, I don't think it took 10 to 20 seconds to go up on the podium or accept your degree. Was it worth it, those 4 or 5 years, right? And so if it did, then you're an individual that's not afraid of hard work, and you're willing to put in that effort in whatever it takes to get there, because you had to go through hundreds of tests and hundreds of indecisive things, or late nights and not eating, and you're totally committed. You had to miss a lot of family gatherings because you had to study for a project so that you would make it, and each one added to something to get you a little forward and a little bit more and a little bit more, and that's how your body reacts as well. You can't go from where you are now to where you want to be, and I know this sounds very obvious, but when you listen to people after they've given up, you said, well, yeah, I went there 2 or 3 times and I didn't see any difference. And it's like, okay, so you thought that you would have this kind of a reaction, that your body would, because you've put yourself into that position for 10 years. It's not going to change in 2 to 3 weeks. Your body needs that ritual. You've had the ritual of whatever it is that brought you where you are, and now what you're saying is the ritual is not working. Because it's the ritual of eating junk food, of not moving too much. That's a ritual, because that's what you're doing all the time, and it doesn't bother you. And so when you start to challenge that ritual, okay, we have to step it up. We have to change the ritual to something else. And you will decide what that is. It is about food, but it isn't always about food. And it's not always about burning calories. It isn't. It's the mindset. Once you've made up your mind, you've already attained it. But it's just that commitment that no matter what happens, I'm going to make this happen. Recently, I had an individual that was renting for about 20 years in an apartment. And I said, you already know this, I told the person. You probably have paid for the apartment if you would have bought it by now, because the rent was very close to the mortgage payments and you would have had it all paid by now, but you're still renting. So, okay, so after 20 years, how are you going to get into this home? He says, I just can't afford it. I says, you've already paid for it. But your mindset was so stuck on the renting because it was just easier to be in the person where you were. But as soon as you say, we're going to get a house, we're going to get this house no matter what, and that thought will start bringing in other things and other people to get involved so that they'll be able to finance you, and then every payment after that will go on you, not go on to a landlord. It is always about a thought away. When you're that determined that you want a degree, you want to get educated, you want your kids educated, somehow we need to transfer that motivation onto our kids. And it won't be because you gave it to them. Somebody once said that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't get them to drink. And then when I further read down that particular article, it said, so what we need to do is move the horse away from the water and start feeding it sand. and there was a reaction there. What do you mean sand? They don't want sand. Exactly. They don't want the water either. So you might as well give them something they don't want anyway. And once they realize, well, I don't want sand, I don't want branches, I need water. Well, it's over there. You want it, you struggle to get it. And when they struggle, you've given them more than you can possibly imagine, because there's an innate energy in struggle. Because now the work comes in. And when they do the work, you almost have to make it harder for them. And then when they attain it, they are the ones that attained it. It isn't that daddy or mommy gave it to me and all I had to do was just jump in the car and go. You want a car? All right. Go get it. I'm not going to buy it for you, even though you could write a check to get one. Somebody said that, I heard a post recently, it said, my grandfather walked 10 miles a day to go to work. My dad walked 5 kilometers to get to work. I have a Cadillac. My son has a Mercedes. My grandson has a Ferrari. And so my great-grandson, I'm going to make sure that he starts walking again. Because it's in the struggle that makes strong men and strong people. Easy makes weak people. It's the strength that means you have to go deeper inside of you, because we can do it. It's just that we don't have to, so we don't. If you ever tried to convince the mind to do more than it should, you're sadly mistaken. It's always going to choose the easiest possible option to do. So it'll do the easiest thing. But when you had to get a degree, and you had to get the bike, and you had to do all those things, look at you now. Look how strong you are. It's not by accident. And yes, I love you to bits, the fact that you want to help your kids by giving them everything you didn't have. Totally trust it to a point. But when you make it so easy that they don't even have to have a goal, all they need to do is have eyes. Grandma, you want to buy me a car? Okay. What have you done to that child? Yes, they get the car, but what are they learning? They're learning entitlement. And it'll take years to grow out of that. Even though if you can write a check, or if you can do all these things, it's almost you're giving more by giving very little. If you want to give them something, wait until they absolutely need it. Like, in other words, they want to do a project and when they want to go to Africa. And they have this burning desire that they want to make a big difference, and they go through all this trouble and they finally get the flights, but then they realize they don't have enough money to do the water thing that they wanted to do, to find water for these people, and so on and so on. And then you say, I'll tell you what, here's $20,000. Is that going to be enough? Oh my God, that is when they grow. You give them money when the only thing left is money that's needed. But when you just give it to them willy-nilly, they're not using their efforts. They're not struggling. There's no struggle. There's nothing wrong with struggling. I remember, and I'm sure I'm talking to the choir here, and I know you've been there. Many of you have been there, but I remember coming home some nights and I'm in tears. Because it was so hard. And I remember one particular time I came home and I was so close to running my car off the road because the insurance money would have given my family something I could never give, and it's just been so difficult in my earlier years. And I made it through the day, which was a big thing. And then my son was up. He was about 3, maybe 4, but 3 or 4 years old. He was standing anyway. And he greeted me. And holding him, that's why I do what I do. I struggled because of him. And now he's got a great job. He's got a great house. I got a great grandson because I sacrificed and I learned and I'm stronger for it. The question is, what will your kids remember in their early years? Because you won't always be there. I will only be on this earth however long I'm gifted and graced that I'm on this earth. But when I'm gone, it's what I've taught my kids that will keep them going. And I don't want to teach them that all they have to do is bat their eyes and they have whatever it is. They have to work for it. And they both are working and they're saving their whatever they're doing and they have goals. And there are some times that I have the funds to be able to take care of the goal, but then Spirit says, no, don't do that. And then I stand back and he says, we're almost there. I'm going to do this, this, and this. I'm going to work on here, and then I'm going to get it. I says, oh, wow, that's great. I'm so proud of him because he's figuring out his way of doing it. I'm not making it easy for him. But when they need it and there's no other alternative, no other way, then the kids grow. Then everything seems to work. But struggle is okay. Work is okay. It'll make you a stronger person, more loving, and you will know the people that love you based on how much work they're going to give out to make you happy, or to give you what you need, and then you'll give somebody else what they need. And that's how a relationship builds. It's not one-sided. If one person loves the other person unconditionally and the other person just takes it for granted, that never works. Tops 10 years. And you wasted 10 years. Now you have to start sort of over. So you learn. So if you want something, you go get it. And know that in the moments of beauty, it's not going to sidetrack you because you're more than willing to put in the work. And if you're willing to do that, you're unstoppable. Thanks a lot, people. I hope this was of value, and I'll have this on the recording later on today. Okay? Love you all, and hope to see you next week. Okay, take care, people.
Thank you, Tony.
Okay, bye, Margaret. Thanks a
Thank you,
lot.
Tony.
Tony.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye now. Love you all.
Bye.